So, unit exam review here, guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a lot of the key concepts from the unit. Okay, talk about how they're going to be tested on the test, and then I will give you some details about the test itself. Okay, so there'll be lots of opportunity for you to get lots of information about the exam. Okay, so first thing we went over, we went over history and structure of the atom. Okay, so in that we went over, like Dalton's atomic theory. That would definitely be something that would be game for the unit exam. Okay, especially as like a multiple choice question, which of the following is not part of Dalton's atomic theory, okay, or something like that. And your understanding of the relevance, I guess, of his atomic theory is also important, okay, because it does go along with our reactions lab that we did. Okay, we know that the signs of a chemical reaction that we observed in that lab are the result of atoms being separated, joined, or rearranged and making new compounds with different physical properties. So being able to understand that and maybe, kind of put that into words is also going to be important. There are a couple of questions about specific people in the multiple choice. Okay, so if someone did something important, okay, like obviously Dalton did something important, okay, J.J. Thomson discovered electrons, Chadwick discovered neutrons, Rutherford proved the existence of the nucleus. That was kind of a big deal. Okay, de Broglie is the person who came up with the electron cloud model, which is currently what we accept. Okay, things like that, like knowing maybe what they did or what their model looked like. Just go over the notes and be able to recognize it in a multiple choice question. Okay, in the written response, one of the things that you will be required to do is to draw a diagram of an atom. Okay, that diagram will need to include the following things. It will need to be of the proper model, our currently accepted model. Okay, it will need to have the right number of protons, the right number of neutrons, the right number of electrons, and have them be in the right places. Okay, it's a pretty easy 5-mark question. Okay, quick review. How do I figure out the number of protons? Okay.
The atomic number.
The atomic number. How do I figure out the number of electrons?
The atomic number.
The atomic number, because it has to be equal to the number of protons. And how do I get the number of neutrons?
The atomic mass minus the atomic number.
Right. Atomic mass minus atomic number, and then round to the nearest whole number. Okay, that will get you your number of neutrons. Okay, we went over that in class, but that's something you're going to have to do if you want to get full marks on that question on the unit exam. Okay. Then, naming compounds. There's some multiple choice questions that are simple, like which of the following is the correct formula for lead 2 iodide, or what's the proper name for CaCl2, okay, things like that. So there'll be some multiple choice questions that are just about naming. Is naming also important for you to be able to do basically the big mark things, reactions and mole equation calculations. So definitely know your naming. That's pretty important. Okay, I can't really stress that enough. Okay, properties of compounds. Okay, lesson 4 is where we went over the properties of compounds. It's also, we also did a lab on that. Okay, so anything that we took the time to do a lab on is something that's definitely going to show up. Could be something like this. You have a compound with the following properties. It is a red crystalline solid that dissolves easily in water, conducts electricity very well, and has a pH of 6. It is A, copper 2 sulfate, B, hydrogen chloride, C, cobalt 2 nitrate, or D, nickel 3 chloride. would it be?
The color A.
If it's red? Blue is copper. Red is cobalt. Okay, so going over those notes and going over the results of your lab would help you with a question like that. Okay, there's a few other questions about simply the properties of compounds, like all molecular compounds would have which properties, A, B, C, or D. Okay, things like that. Okay, so make sure you go over lesson 4, okay, because the properties of compounds was something pretty important. All right, and that's all multiple choice. Okay, solubility. Okay, there's terminology about solubility in the multiple choice. You know, solute, solvent, precipitate. Okay. And the use of your solubility chart. Okay, could very easily put a question up that had a chemical reaction. Okay, maybe like this. So I put that up there, and then I say, which, if any, of the products would be soluble? Or I don't even give you the products, I just give the reactants, and I say, which, if any, of the products would be soluble? You'd have to predict the products and then go, okay, well, potassium nitrate looks like it's soluble on my chart, but lead is not, lead 2 iodide is not soluble, so that would be a precipitate. Okay, and your options would be like A, lead 2 iodide. B, potassium nitrate. C, both are soluble. D, neither are soluble. Okay, something like that. Does that sort of make sense what I'm looking for there? Just being able to use your solubility chart. And the last question in the written response is kind of a separate the wheat from the chaff kind of a question. So it's a higher level thinking question. Okay, and it does have an element of it that has to do with your solubility chart and your understanding of solubility. And so I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but solubility, being able to understand the use of the solubility chart is going to be important to help you with that question. Oh, that was right there. So application questions, solubility, and reactions. So okay, I've got it on there, so we'll talk about it now. The last question is going to ask you a real-world application or kind of, well, let's say application kind of question. It's going to involve reactions and solubility in a real-world situation. Okay, so I will give you a situation in which a chemical reaction and solubility will be applied, and you will have to explain to me maybe like what kind of reaction might be needed, okay, how solubility might help in that situation, okay, something like that. Without giving it away, that's about as much as I can tell you, okay. It does have to be one where you have to kind of face it and go, what do I know, what can I say here, right? Okay, polar nature of water. Okay, there is a written response question where you will have to explain what it means to be a polar molecule. Okay, some of the structural things, behavioral things, okay, that a polar molecule, water specifically, might have, exhibit, do. That kind of thing. So, be able to explain what a polar molecule is. Okay, talk about hydrogen bonds. Hydrogen bonds cause two behaviors. And how that might be used by living things. Why did I spell that? Behavior never looks right, no matter how I spell it. You guys have a word that's like that for you? Doesn't matter how you write it, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look right either way. Behavior. Things it does. That way I don't have to. Yeah. All right. So yeah, there'll be a written response question about that. So make sure you go over your notes from lesson 7. That's where that is. Okay, and be able to tell me what it means to be a polar molecule, what that does. Okay, and these things here as well. Okay, reactions. It's by far the biggest part of the test. Okay, there are more marks on reactions on this test than anything else, almost more than everything else combined. Okay, it's huge. So, there's a few reaction questions in the multiple choice, like which of the following would be a single replacement reaction, A, B, C, or D? Okay, so being able to identify reaction types. Understanding the signs of a chemical reaction is also something that could be in the multiple choice. Okay? In the written response, okay, has anyone had a chance to look at the practice test? Good, because I told you to do it last. And that means that you listened. I like that. Okay, when you look at the practice test, okay, the written response part of the practice test, that is the skeleton of your written response on Wednesday. Okay, so first question, some balancing. Second question, reactions. Third question, structure of the atom. Fourth question, mole equation. Or it's something like, okay, and then there's your polar nature of water question, any solubility, that kind of stuff. Like this. So it's going to follow basically the same setup as the practice test. So there are some balancing. I'll go over exactly how many here in a minute. Okay, and then there's some where you have to write out, identify, okay, balance, predict products, okay, all of that stuff, okay, is on there. Exactly the stuff that was on your reactions assignment. Okay, and then the mole equation, oh, we talked about that multiple choice thing yesterday, right? Okay, then the mole equation, there's one of each kind on the test. Okay, we went over 4 kinds, there's one of each on the unit exam. Okay, and the last thing that is on there is, I don't think I have it on here, but it should be, scientific method. Okay. And what I mean by that is, if I was to describe an experiment that you could identify the manipulated, responding, and controlled variables in it. Okay, so here's an example. A security company is testing glass to be used in banks. Okay, to do this, they set up different types of glass, and they fire a gun at each pane of glass. Okay, the first piece of glass is 1 centimeter thick. The second piece of glass is 1.5 centimeters thick. The third piece of glass is 2 centimeters thick. Okay, the weapon is always fired from 5 meters away. Okay, the temperature is always 20 degrees Celsius, and the same caliber of weapon is used in every fire. Okay, what's the manipulated variable? How thick the glass is. Okay, because that was changed by the experimenter. What's the responding variable, do you suppose?
What happens to each glass?
Yeah. Okay, what happens to the glass? Or maybe they would measure the penetration depth of the bullet or something like that after the fact. Okay?
If it's just solid glass, they'll just shatter.
Okay, well, it's a security company, so we would assume it's bulletproof glass. Because, yeah, it doesn't matter how thick you make glass, it's going to break. What are the controlled variables?
The temperature and the gun.
The temperature, the weapon,
The distance.
the distance it's fired from. There's 3, right? Is that what you have to do in every lab you do? That's what I'm asking you to do on the test. Here's an experiment, tell me what the manipulated variable is. Here's an experiment, tell me what the controlled variables are. Okay, things like that. Everyone okay with that? Okay, so that's what's on there. That's your test.
Is that unwritten?
That's multiple choice, sorry. And this is written here. Okay, so your test has 33 multiple choice questions. In those 33 multiple choice questions, I'm going to ask things like physical versus chemical change, physical versus chemical properties, the scientific method questions we just talked about, okay? Properties of compounds, solubility, structure, atomic structure, like, you know, being able to tell me how many neutrons are in an atom, in a particular atom, or in a something like that. Okay, naming and writing formulas, history of the atom, reaction types, and again, history of the atom. So it's mostly recall, okay? Like there's no calculations or anything like that in the multiple choice part of the test. Okay? In the written response part of the test, there are 6 questions for 51 marks. Okay? So, the way that's going to go. Question number 1. 7 reactions that need balancing. 1 mark each. Question number 2. 4 reactions that need to be predicted, balanced, and type identified. Okay? And they are worth 4 marks each. Third question, draw me a picture of an atom. And it'll be a specific one. Okay, so that you can figure out how many of each thing there are. Question number 4, your 4 mole equation questions. And they are, there's a couple worth 3 and there's a couple worth 4. So the whole question is out of 14 marks. Question number 5 is your polar nature of water question. And question number 6 is the one we talked about that's about reactions and solubility. It's a real world, apply your knowledge type of situation. Okay, that's your test. That's what you can expect on Wednesday. Okay? And you have a practice test that is the same format, slightly shorter. I think it only has 25 multiple choice questions instead of 33. Okay? And it's got, I think, the same amount and type of written response questions. Right? So it'll give you a pretty good idea of how well you know the stuff. Okay? All the questions on the practice test were on this unit exam at some point in the past. Okay? I do not change the format of my unit exam. Okay? So it's always going to look just like your practice test. I just change the particulars. Okay? So what are some things that are a good idea to do to prepare? Did somebody who is super thoughtful give you a exam review package? Do that. Okay? There's a bunch of questions before the practice test, okay? And there's a key included, right? So you can check your answers as you go. Okay? I would do that. And then I would do the practice test. Okay? Do you have a bunch of worksheets in your worksheet package? Do you have keys for that? Okay, they're posted in the classwork tab. It says keys for all reaction works or for all chemistry worksheets, and they're all in there. Okay, now I'm not saying you need to go back and do every single worksheet over again. Please do not do that. Okay, but if you've gone over the practice materials and you're like, oh, I still am not getting this, you've got some extra ones there in the worksheet booklet that you can use to practice with because you can check. Okay, now next week, if you are needing help, you only have one chance to get it, and that is Tuesday, right? So do this stuff over the weekend, and then if there's questions, come and see me on Tuesday, okay? And either before, well, actually, it can't be, yeah, it could be before school, okay? At lunch for the first half, nighttime, or even after school for a short period, okay? You can come and see me and ask questions, okay, if you have any. Yes. All right. Is it okay to, is it a good idea to read over your notes? It's definitely a good idea, especially the lessons I mentioned in particular. Okay, like history of the atom, lesson 1. Okay, lesson 4 on properties of compounds. Lesson 7 on solubility and the polar nature of water. Okay, you're gonna have to do some writing on those, and you know that stuff is gonna be in the multiple choice, so not a bad idea to read over those ones in particular. Okay. The majority, guys, of this test is testing your skills, okay? Not so much your knowledge, mostly your skills, okay? That is your reaction skills, predicting, writing, balancing, okay? Your ability to do mole equation calculations, that kind of stuff, okay? That's the bulk of the marks, so practice, okay? To prepare for chemistry, to prepare for physics, practice. Preparing for biology, reading. Okay, like in biology, it's like read and regurgitate. Okay, in chemistry and in physics, it's practice and demonstrate. Okay. All right. Questions from you guys? Anything you'd like me to go over in a little more detail? Okay. Well, we still got about 20 minutes or so. My suggestion would be maybe start on that review package right now. And if any questions come up, I'll be happy to answer.